People say I'm toxic, and honestly, I don't care.
Hello and good afternoon, good evening, good night, good morning, wherever you are. I'm Abs of October Red and I'm joined by Matchroom CEO, Frank Smith. Always a pleasure to have you on, Frank. How the devil are you?
I'm very good. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, all the better for seeing you. Frank, it's been a busy few months and I'm going to get straight into it. So shout out to all the chat that's here. You know I will get to you when I get to you. If you've got any questions, please put them in the chat and I'll do my best to get to them. But I'm going to go straight back to last week, if we can, Frank. And it's for the Katie Taylor, Amanda Serrano 2. I want to know about the hospitality and how you guys were greeted out there. First of all, let's warm up the seats.
Yeah, I mean, it was different. You know, I think I don't want to sound like moaning because I actually think too much time in the sport is actually spent moaning, and we're all guilty of doing it, and we've all been there, and you know, it's not always good. I don't think that. I think there's courtesies in the business where you've looked after people in the past, looked after people well, and then it's not always reciprocated. In truth, you know, and there's obviously a lot of history between the groups of people involved here. But even regardless of that, I think there's a lot of people. You know, I did an interview the other day, and I mentioned about not getting a pass or not looking up. And I said, look, we always look after everyone. You know, and even for all of my comments of Ben Shalom in the past, if you ask him how he was treated when he came to our Birmingham show, as an example, and looked after, I'm not sure he could complain. He could complain about some of the things I've said, and I wouldn't blame him for that. I'd say fair enough, but I'd stand by what I've said. But at the same time, I don't ever take those elements into just natural courtesies of, you got fighter on the show, you should be in their change room, you should be in the front row, you should have a pass, you should be looked after. And I think you could talk to anyone, whether they like me or not is another story, or whether they have a good feeling towards us, or whether we have a good relationship. And we always look after people. And it wasn't so much reciprocated here.
How did you deal with that then? I know it's kind of like it's here, so we deal with it, but how did you deal with it?
I think you just, I mean, I'll give you an example. On the night of the show, I didn't get a pass because they said, well, you got your allotted passes for Matchroom. And we've always gone above and beyond for people. And, you can say, this is what you get under the dick, and we've always looked after people. I don't care. I've never watched so much boxing in my life. I sat in the front row for 3 hours watching fights. So, it's one of those things. How do you deal with it? Who cares? Let's be honest. Like, I don't need to be back there. I had nothing to the changing room. So the reality of it is I couldn't be bothered either way. But again, it's the courtesy element, I think, more, or the principle over anything else. And I think when you look after people a lot, you sort of think, why do you do everyone else favours? But again, you've just got to rise above it, because it is what it is. It's only some games, and you've got to be flattered, really.
Yeah, I remember years ago, and I understand that, probably a lot's happened now. Maybe bridges have been burned. I don't know the ins and outs of everything because I tend to keep away from the gossip side of boxing. But I remember when Amanda Serrano fought Katie Taylor the first time, and the press conference was in London, and obviously Jake Paul was there with Amanda, and it was a really good press conference. It was really pro for both fighters. I think the only thing that was said that, it's Jake Paul that's the youngest promoter. It's not, they mentioned Ben Shalom at the time being the youngest promoter. And I remember that was the only little bit of sharpness or ice that we had from that. But so much has changed over the years until it's like, for whatever reason, some of you guys are left out in the cold. I mean, I saw a clip with Brian Peters that was saying, come on, you're allowed 3 people at the top table. This was at the end of the fight. So I think I got a credit Boxing King Media for that. And he was like, we all go up there, or none of us go up there.
Look, we've been on a journey with Katie Taylor. It's very rare that you see a fighter like Katie. We had breakfast on Saturday morning. There was the same 6 people. She, in her change room, she literally has 4 people in there. So it's been the same people on this journey. And it's such an amazing thing, especially for someone who's done what she's done in the sport. Such an amazing thing to see, that she hasn't lost touch of it, and she's still the same person, you know. And I think the thing from Brian is like, look, we're all here together, and also, who cares? Like, really, who cares? Like, why are you bothered? Oh, are we gone? Are we back?
No, I can see you. Can you not see
Sorry,
me?
it froze for a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it's why are you bothered? And the reality is, it's focused around like on the weigh-in. At one point, they didn't want to let Eddie go back to the changing room afterwards after the weigh-in. You know, it's just like it's petty. It's petty stuff. But again, it is what it is.
Speaking from like the fighter's point of view, can that disrupt like Katie's mindset going into the fight? There's a lot of pressure on. Obviously, she's not, you know, at home. It's not a home crowd, you know, or albeit the Irish has you know, a strong population over the United States of America. But does that put it on a little bit of a, I don't know, can that get into her head? What's Katie like? I've never spoke to her, so.
I don't think so. She's very focused. You know, she literally trains, fights. You know, she is so focused on what she's doing. I don't think that those. Just being completely honest, I don't think that bothers her or gets in her mind. You know, but again, it just goes back to the basic principles or the courtesies that we all work towards. You know, whether we like each other or not. You know, that's always the way.
Yeah, I understand that. But can we talk about the fight itself? You know, once again, a really good battle between two elite fighters, an enjoyable fight. If I hear that Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor are fighting, I don't care what's going on. You know, I'm gonna watch that fight because we know we're guaranteed fireworks. You said you were sat ringside watching the fight. Have you had any time at all to sit and watch it back? And I'm heading this way because of the commentary.
No, look, unbelievable fight, and the two, you know, Katie, Amanda deserve so much respect, you know, because they've given us now 2 nights of
Yeah,
amazing entertainment, two of the best fights we've seen over recent times, and you know, just constant back and forth. I didn't, obviously, I haven't listened to the commentary, didn't see it on the night. I saw a lot of comments about it that it was very pro Serrano. Um, or you know that was all the scoring. But look, I think it's tougher. It is tougher to score the 2 minute rounds because it's so fast paced, and you know you got such a short amount of time there to decide. And I had it. It was a very close fight. It was a very
yeah,
close fight, and I kind of felt like being back in America, being in America. You know, I thought Amanda Serrano could have got the nod there, but we've been on the end, and as Eddie said, of close fights where we've lost multiple times recently. And you know, they can go either way. It can be a small swing. But look, it was an amazing fight, spectacular one to watch and to be ringside for. And you know, maybe it's one we'll see again. It's a huge fight in the sport. You know, the viewing figures were massive. Maybe that's a fight we'll see again.
massive. And we're going to touch on those viewing figures because it's something that I don't usually keep an eye on, Frank, but this time I definitely did. Just to address some of the comments as well, I thought the commentary was very biased, but I'm glad that Roy Jones Jr. was there because he was able to provide a very objective view and sit there and look at the, you know, the pros and the cons of both fighters. So you know, it was interesting to listen to Roy Jones Jr. and that was the only voice that I actually tuned into on the commentary. There's a few comments, and I don't know if you want to address these or not, of Katie leading with her head. Obviously, we had the head clash, that awful cut, which that could have stopped the fight in itself. But what would you say to those that were saying that Katie was potentially leading with her head intentionally?
I don't think she was. You know, but everyone's going to have their view. I think it was the
Yeah.
style of fight. It was, you know, it was a rough fight as well. You know, like the two of them going at it. And I think, you know, look, she got the point deducted. So if people felt that way, she got the deduction. If people feel that that's one of their concerns. You know, I think it was amazing that the fight carried on with that
Yeah.
cut. And they made the right decision, by the way, because it didn't really get worse. But in other territories, in other jurisdictions, that fight would have been called off, I think. You know, so fair play to the doctor because, you know, on first hand, it did look very bad and it could have, but it didn't seem to get worse throughout the fight. So yeah, but I'm glad that it carried on because we never want to see a fight called off because of a cut.
We definitely don't. There is, I think Amanda Serrano's come out and she's such a, she's a very good sports person. I can't say sportsman now, can I? But she's a very good sports person who gave, the credit to Katie for both of them once again entertaining the fans. I've heard both of them or potentially one of them talk about a trilogy. Will there be a trilogy? Because I think Jake Paul said he wants to get Croke Park and he wants to do the 3-minute rounds. What's Matchroom stances on that?
Look, it's an amazing fight. It's like I said earlier, two amazing fights that delivered, and the third fight would do exactly the same, wouldn't it? And I think when you look in Katie Taylor's position, there's not tons of fights out there for her. Is the reality of the you look Amanda Serrano's a fight. People talk about Chantel Cameron as well. Is another fight there, but I think she's going to do what is the biggest fight commercially for her. And that is still the biggest fight out there. And also it's kind of, I think she's 38 years old now. It's how long does she want to go on for? What does she want from the sport now? And money is always important for everyone, whether they say it or not. Everyone loves making money, of course. But at some point it gets to where you go, I've accomplished everything I wanted to accomplish. And I'll go, thanks very much. I'm done. So it's gonna be an interesting period to see what's next, but that is a huge fight, this trilogy.
How do you feel like anyway that another promotional company, of a potential rival promotional company, was able to give Katie Taylor that career best payday? Does that ever have an effect on a promoter, or you like it doesn't matter because we're going to get a cut? Or what is your your stance on that as a promoter?
Look, she's had very similar paydays from other fights in her career with us.
Oh, don't get it twisted then, Frank.
But I also think it's, I see these articles of $13 million. Like, that's completely made up. By the way, it's amazing that they're making huge money because they're delivering. They deserve to make massive money. But the $13 million, all these articles are just, they're not real. And they're obviously pushed by people to push a narrative that we're doing amazing things or better than what other people have done in the past in the sport, etc. But I think whatever way big fights can get delivered, and we showed that with working that way. We've been with Katie our whole career, and I think we've been a part of the journey. And again, she has gone in there and done the business time and time again. But at the same time, we've been a part of that journey, and I think we've been a major part, not looking for sort of a well done, but a major part in the growth of female boxing over the past
You can't
7,
argue
8,
that.
9 years. It's been something we've invested heavily in, and it's great now that there's opportunities not just from us but other promoters, whether that's MVP, whether that's Boxer, whether that's Queensbury now signing feet. Like that's a good thing. And long may it continue. So I don't really look at it and go, oh, they paid her. She made the most money over there. It's like we've all been a part of why that is what it is. So happy days, congrats, well done. Rather than look at it in a sort of negative manner.
Yeah, and that's a fair answer. It's just something that I thought I'd ask because I saw a few bits and pieces out there online, but it just goes to show you can't necessarily believe everything that you read out there online, Frank. Yeah. Netflix coming into boxing, it's something that I thought about years ago. It's something that I even said I wouldn't mind working with Netflix myself. This is, as DAZN was sort of like in the inception with yourselves for broadcasting in the UK. And I get it, you can't answer for Netflix, but you see things in black and white. You're very business minded, so I do value your opinion. Do you think Netflix will come in on a permanent basis, or do you think that was potentially a one-off?
I think when you look at the kind of things they've been doing in live sport, prior to this, they did a golf event, I think, in Las Vegas, which was a bit of it wasn't like a PGA event or a live golf event, for example. It was very much more entertainment. I think when you look at the product from Friday night, and this is not meant to, I'm not trying to say this in a negative manner in any way. There's a product there for it. Look how many people are in the venue. Look how many people were watching. But it's not traditional. But like Jake Paul against Mike Tyson, they were all there to see Mike Tyson, is the reality. And Jake Paul is a tremendous marketeer. And as much as whether you like him, dislike him, whatever your feeling is towards him, what he does, what his brother does, amazing to see. But that isn't real boxing. A 27-year-old fighting a 58-year-old man, you know, that's not, because in real boxing, when would you ever hear in a press conference, yeah, I went easy on him because I didn't want to. And by the way, I'm not saying again that in a bad way, but that isn't, it's an entertainment product more than anything else. And it worked, and there is a market for it, and it was a spectacle, and it was an amazing show. And I'm not a hater. Like I say all these things. I said it to Nikita again with all our differences. I said, look, fair play, amazing night. You know, I'm not. We can sit here and go, that's good, but it's not the product we're necessarily in. If it has positives for boxing, because look at what it did for the undercard fighters on the show.
Yeah.
So that's what I take from it. But when I look at, would they have done that night without Jake Paul, Mike Tyson, or without, you know, another example of a fight I think does great numbers like that is Jake Paul, Conor McGregor. That's something that's huge. Are they going to come into boxing as a full time and be doing, I don't know, 99.9% of the fights you see this year within boxing? I don't believe so. But
Okay.
any broadcaster that adds to boxing is good for the sport. You know, that's my view of it. But I do think when you look at what they've done, like I say, in live sport currently, it's very much more entertainment led. And there's a
Okay.
market for that, because look how many people watched it. Like, so, you know, that's my view on it.
We'll definitely have to see. I'm going to go to the chat, so apologies. I'm going to get to you guys now. Thank you all for tuning in. It's very much appreciated. So good afternoon to Toby Ringel Bartlett. He loves your ring girls, by the way. He says never get rid of them, and he's appreciative of them also in darts. I'll leave that there with you. Hakan says,
Thanks,
big up Abs and Frank. Aaron, I hope you're still on your lunch break because we're slightly late. And thank you as well for becoming a new member. There's some questions in here, right? Because I've got a couple of these questions are going to override with mine, but why not? Hakan was saying, when can we expect an announcement of the new signings for Matchroom? And this is something I've been rambling on about, but I'm only interested in your heavyweight signings, but new signings it is.
Over the next 2 weeks, you'll see some more. We're just finalising a few bits now. So over the next 2 or 3 weeks, you'll see some new signings ahead of a big 2025.
Are any of them heavyweights?
I don't know. I don't get involved with the weights.
Okay. This sort of follows on from it as well. Aaron says, will any female fighters be signing to DAZN? I'm going to presume that's Matchroom because DAZN cover a lot of things now. Seems quiet with the up-and-comers. Caitlin Parker, Ginny Fuchs, Emma Whitworth, Bree Howling. A few names to mention there from Aaron.
Yeah, I think there's always discussions ongoing. You know, we have to look at what markets were going to be the focus for us. So I'm sure there will be in a not too distant future.
Sportsmaster says, good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon back to you, Sportsmaster. And James, what a buzz for Matchroom and Eddie when Katie won. That emotion of him in the ring.
Yeah, I think you saw that. I don't think he hid any emotions in there on a Friday night. Do you know what? I think when I say as well about the journey we've been on with Katie Taylor and the nights we've been involved in, I said it again to Katie when we sat down with her on Saturday. 3 of the best nights I think I've had in the sport prior to, were the MSG and the 2 nights with Chantel Cameron in Dublin. Just because I think the passion, the fans she brings and the passion she brings is quite amazing to see. And it's not something that's really matched. You know, we've worked with other commercial stars who do huge numbers, huge gates, huge tickets. But there's something about, she is like a hero for Ireland.
She's a trailblazer, isn't she?
Yeah, and what she's done for the sport. And that story, I don't think gets told enough as to what, her past, what she did, going into boxing clubs, pretending to be a boy, then going into the IOC, like all of these things. I think it's going to make an amazing movie one day when it comes out.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It'd be so good to hear it because Kate is not somebody that, jumps in front of the camera very often at all. She's very meek and mild outside the ring, but when she gets in there, she's an absolute terror. So, yeah, that'd
100%.
definitely be something that I'd look forward to watching. We've got one of our comments. Rem has said Taylor uses her head like Warrington 2.0, and he thinks that she didn't deserve the win. And I get it. Everyone's going to have their opinion, so...
Yeah, look, everyone, rightly so. Just like when we say people don't deserve to win fight, or we think our guy wins or our girl wins, everyone can have their opinion. That's the joys of boxing.
the joys of boxing. Aaron Daly points out a really good question. I probably wouldn't have asked it if he didn't bring it up. What is happening with Jordan Thompson? Is he ready to come back at heavyweight? Is he still signed with Matchroom? What is going on with him?
I spoke to him. I think I've said this to you before. I've got a long relationship with Jordan. I've known him since I was a kid.
I've seen your two baby pictures
Yeah,
together.
yeah. So since I was 2 years old, or a baby, or a year old, he has got a fight with us. He's going to move to heavyweight, but looking at new trainers, and that's been a process. Look, it's been a long time since that fight, but he wants to get it right. You know, he takes everything he does very seriously. He's he's still young as well. He's still very young. He's still very fresh. He's a tremendous athlete. So he's just working out what he wants to do next. I spoke to him a week ago, I think, and he said, "Look, I'm still deciding. I'll be back to you very soon." You know, so we'll see how things play out. He's got to make the right decision, you know, and I think he's one of those people that it has to be 100% right in his mind. He's not going to rush something and make the wrong decision.
Yeah, I do agree with that. And something that I've often joked about with Jordan is the fact that, he changes his trainers like he changes his underwear. That was a long-standing joke. So he really does need to get that foundation in place and be really certain about it to stay with it and to build and to come back, stronger than before. So we genuinely wish him all the best for that. Frank, we've got to talk about November the 30th, the card that is in Birmingham, my hometown, which I'm very, very passionate about. And it's always great to see you guys in Birmingham. I've said it before, Matchroom guys, you guys have been there almost from the beginning. It was Boxer first, then it was yourselves, but I've always felt at home with all of you guys, all of your staff, all of your team. Doesn't matter whether it's the cameraman or you or Eddie Hearn. So it's always good to see you guys when you come back to Birmingham. Edwards Yafai, is that what you'd say is a must-win fight, Frank? Must win, and I say that as in where does the loser go?
I think it's a tremendous fight. It's something I've spoken about when we were making the fight as well. There's a potential if that's a great fight, there's potential to do 2 or 3 of those together.
Okay.
They're two huge names, when you think in British boxing, family history that's run back for 10 odd years now. And I think there's a lot of potential there to do multiple fights. The winner, though, is going to want to go on and fight for a world title. That's going to be the focus for them. And but I don't think by any means, and this is where we come back to the point that we've discussed many times, losing a fight of that level, a bit like when Sonny got beat by Jesse Van Rodriguez. He's a spectacular fighter. Like, why is the mentality there of, you're finished now, or you go and lose against Sonny Edwards is a tremendous fight. Galal fight is a tremendous fight. They've both done different things. Sonny's gone into the pro ranks, won world title, had a tremendous pro career. Galal fight, has had 10 fights now as a pro, but went and won a gold medal in the Olympics. I think there's no loss of pride in losing that fight for either one of those. Look, we obviously represent both guys, and you just want the best man to go in there and win. You want them to be healthy, safe, and you want to deliver the biggest possible opportunities. And that's what this fight was for both of them. It was the best possible fight and the biggest opportunity. And it's going to have a packed out house in there in Birmingham next Saturday night on November 30th. So I don't look at it. Look, it's a must win in every fighter's mindset. Of course, that's the fighter's mindset. But in terms of career, that doesn't mean that if you lose in one of these fights, in these huge fights, your career's over. And that's something I've pushed time and time again with a number of fighters. You take real fights, you take challenges, there's going to be more and more opportunities. And I think the fans respect that.
Yeah, I think sometimes, though, Frank, we as fans, and I'll always speak from a fan's point of view because I am a boxing fan, sometimes it was like, say, if the fighter does lose, the promoter will they'll shelve them. We won't necessarily hear from them again. And that is usually it. So when we say it's like, what happens if the person loses, is it's because they're finished. It's because we have seen that pattern before with promotional companies. Because like you said, you're pumping a lot of money into these fighters and seldom will you get that return. There's only a minuscule amount of stars that you will make out of the amount of fighters that you get. So I kind of get it now that, how much more are we prepared to invest in this fighter? But like you said, with this fight, there's potential of a 2, a 3 fight. It doesn't necessarily have to be just the one.
Yeah, look, I do think as well, it depends on levels of fights. You know,
All
if
right.
we're putting a fighter in a fight and he loses against a journeyman and you've invested substantially into them and there's no onward part, like it's from both sides as well. But when you look at a number of out, look at Sonny Edwards after Bam, he went straight back in there with Curiel. Now he's got this massive fight with Galauya fight, all within 11 months, 10, 11 months. He had 3 fights within 11 months, this will be. When you look at Amo Williams, he went in there, he took a challenge against Hamza Shiraz. He was back out in November. He's going to be back out early part of next year. So we don't, we don't look at fights and go, you lost. So don't get me wrong, there are going to be times where you have fighters on 1 or 2 fight deals. It depends on the structure as well. I
All
think
right.
when you've brought a fighter through for a number of years, you never, we're not the kind of people who are just going to say, right, thanks very much. But it depends on every deal is different, and you could read out a list of fighters and say, what about this person? Like Jordan Thompson? The perception would be, oh, Matchroom just haven't bothered, but actually he's making a decision for his career to wait. So everyone is individual in their own right. Where if you went through a list of 50 fighters that have lost over the last 4 years, I could give you like this was the plan, or this
All
is what we look to do, or and everyone would be different. But I think the key for me is a loss doesn't define you like it maybe did in the past.
Yeah, and that's good to hear. So we'll move on from that. We've got December the 14th, Monte Carlo. It's a card. I think Boxers just announced their card with Natasha Jonas on the same date. I guess the time zones are the same. So talk to us about that Monte Carlo card. I know it's exclusive. It's the Thai event. It's like the posh boxing event that you have, and it's nice to see that you're putting another one on, because I do like, even though I'm at home, I do like to watch those shows. It's just quite atmospheric. It's James Bondish, and I like that stuff.
Yeah, look, it's been something we've done now for 7 years, apart from some of the pandemic years. Been 7, 8 years since we first went there. When we went with the heavyweights, then Dimitri Bivol fought Trent Broadhurst there, I think in 2018 or 2017, something like that. So it's been a long relationship we've got there. Monaco's got an amazing history with boxing going back many years, and probably 100 odd years. And it's been something that's been important to us as a business to keep working with with the government there to keep delivering it. A great card as well. You got Ant Medelia fighting for the interim world title. He's obviously waited a long time for that shot against Inoue. We didn't want to wait any longer, so we're doing this fight. Hopefully he gets his shot after this because he deserves it. Gary Cully, Maxie Hughes is a tremendous fight there between those two. An important fight for both of them, because the winner can go on to big fights from there off the back of that. Then you've got Chev Clark fighting for the European title. He's someone who's been so active. He fought at Belfast at the turn of the year in January. He went on and fought on the Josh Taylor, Jack Casserole card in May. He fought in LA back in August in a tough fight. And this is a tough fight as well. And, credit to Chev Clark, because he always wants to keep moving forward in those real fights. 4 fights, 4 great fights within this, 12-month period. So great for him as well. And Beatrice Ferreira, she's coming off the back of the Paris Olympics. She was the first world champion. We were aiming for her to be the first female world champion to go in and win a gold medal as well. She didn't win the medal in the end, win the gold medal in the end. But, she's got a tremendous career ahead of her as well. She's building a real fan base for herself. So exciting card. And I think there's going to be one more to add as well.
Can I ask you about the it's all right because you've just touched on Beatrice Ferreira, you touched on the amateur. There's the IBA Pro division. What do you think about that? Is it the IBA Pro division? Yeah,
IBA
it's on
professional,
BoxRec.
yeah.
Yeah, well, what do
Yeah,
you think of that? Because they're coming into it like another market, another promotional company where they've got the access to the amateurs to pull them in to be promoted by them. Your thoughts on that?
Look, I think there's going to be a lot of changes with the whole boxing organisations with the amateurs. Like you say, they're now moving more towards the pro ranks. They've got very big funding around it. I think you've seen a lot more of the likes of in the past, Uzbeks had fought on those shows, a number of Russians, etc. I think actually Uzbekistan's amateur federation have just moved across. Is it the new boxing organisation for the amateurs? I think there's going to be a lot of changes over the next, especially with all the talk around the 2028 Olympics, boxing not being a part of that currently. There's lots happening on that side. I think when you look at what they're trying to do with the IBS, create more of a WBA, WBO, IBF, they've got their own belts, they've got their own thing they're doing over there. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how it develops over the coming time.
And I think we're definitely at a crossroads in boxing. I was saying that with so many events, 2024 has been pivotal to boxing. We're experiencing so many changes, including yourself practically working side by side with, say, for example, Queensbury, more closer than the other organisations. I know you've worked with all promoters, but that's the one that stands out the most. And now, like you said, we're getting the amateur division involved in the pro game. We've had Netflix host their first professional boxing match, albeit the entertainment was the Mike Tyson-Jake Paul fight. I do believe that I think in years to come, I do believe this period in boxing will be looked back at as like literally the turning point, the crossroads of boxing.
Yeah, look, I think it's constantly evolving, the sport. Like even in the time we've been in, whether it was PBC coming in with $500-600 million of investment, whether it was then DAZN coming in, whether it was then Triller getting involved for a short period of time.
Oh, yeah,
Now you
Triller.
talk about Netflix, and then you talk about the old guard of HBO and Showtime leaving boxing. Like it's constantly evolving, the sport, and it's a sport that for the last hundreds, or for a long, long time, there's always been huge investment, that keeps on coming into the sport. And I'm sure we'll continue to do so. I think there's more of a direction now to how do we look to come together and keep building, you see with Riyadh season and what they've done, that's been great for the sport. So I think it's going to be an interesting few years. But it's not just this year that you look at and go, like I say, all these things. Go back all these years and go to pivotal points of PBC came in and did what they did.
Yeah.
They tried to really take away from the governing bodies, and then these people come in, and then the next, so it's like nothing else really, boxing in that regard.
When I look at Matchroom, I look at innovation, because Matchroom were the first one to take the plunge and leave terrestrial TV, as it were. I know it's like satellite dishes and that. Oh, he's disappeared. Oh, is he going to come back? This is the benefit of lives. Here we go. Is he back? Frank Smith. Benefit of lives. Thank you for all of you that are tuning in at the moment. I'm Abs of October Red. We've had a little glitch there. I'm going to make the assumption that somebody's called Frank while he's been involved in this live. I think he's trying to get back on. But salute to everybody in the chat. I'm going to try and get through all the questions. But as you can hear, I've got a plethora of questions that I'm trying to get to myself. Phone calls, Frank.
I can't. I don't know what's happened.
Can you hear me? Can't hear me, can he? The same thing. It's because he's had a phone call. Yeah, he's going to leave and try and come back in. Like I said, I'm going to try and get through all of your questions, but I've got a couple that I wanted answering myself. Unfortunately, Frank doesn't manage to come back in. I'll have to continue this when I see him fight week in Birmingham for Edwards Yafai. Let me just go into the chat and see if there's any other messages in there that are not question related. I think we've got to Jordan Thompson. Here he is. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. I don't know. I stopped. I couldn't hear you. I could see you, but talking, couldn't hear.
It's okay. Most people switch off when I'm talking anyway, but here we are. So we've got Johnny Fisher. I was going to ask a question, but it's gone completely out of my head. I'm not scripted. Johnny Fisher then is going up against Dave Allen on the December the 21st, the Usyk 2 Fury card. Johnny Fisher, his career, and a lot of comments that come in about Johnny's, yeah, he's brilliant, he's lovely, but you guys protect him because he sells the most tickets. What would you say to that, Frank?
I think it's about a gradual journey and building fighters in the right way, and certain fighters in the right manner and putting them in the right fights at the right time. The heavyweight division is unlike any other division. He probably comes under more fire to take fights than other fighters because he's got such a profile. Do you know what I mean? Like if he was in the background having 15 fights, not selling tickets without the profile, you wouldn't question. And like a lot of these heavyweights go off and they can have fights and they can build, they can develop and grow. He's under a lot more pressure at an early stage of his career because he's got that profile. So I think it's about doing it in the right way. I think Alan Babbage was a step forward for him. A fight where he went in and delivered what he did. That performance, that win. So yeah, it's just about, and every fighter is different. Not every fighter is on the same trajectory or path, or you can say, this is the way to build them. You have to treat each of their careers in different ways. So he wants to keep developing. Dave Allen is a fighter that, he's going to go in there. He knows how to, get through rounds. It's going to be a different type of fight for him. And all of these things he needs to take on board, especially in the heavyweight division. So I think, that's going to be a great fight. We've also got Peter McGrail. He's on there as well against Dennis McCann. I think that's one of the best fights of the year, a tremendous fight. We made that so quickly as well. Both guys wanted it. And it just shows as well, like Peter McGrail on that journey, he got beat by Jericho Quinn, was supposed to rematch him. That fight didn't happen, and it doesn't define you a loss because he goes in and beats Dennis McCann. He's at the, he's in a sort of position then to go and call out the big names after that. So, that's a brilliant fight as well. I think Israel Madrimov is in a tremendous fight as well on that night. Madrimov going straight back in there after that Crawford fight. It was a close fight against Terence
Good
Crawford.
fight.
But he's got a real fight on December 21st as well. So excited for that card, and obviously headlined by the big heavyweight fight that everyone wants to see between Usyk and Fury again, which should, anything can happen there.
Anything can happen. And once again, I've got to speak about Anthony Joshua because you mentioned Tyson Fury or Alexander Usyk, and I'll always think of Anthony Joshua. Obviously, he's boxed Usyk twice, fell short there. When you're looking at strategies and planning for Anthony Joshua, because obviously our last conversation, it's like, he's going to have some time out, injured, etc. Not going straight back in to the Dubois fight, but should be ready maybe March next year. Are you waiting to find out what happens with obviously the winner of Usyk Fury 2? I mean, when you look about a plan that's around Anthony Joshua for his comeback, a fight, who are you thinking of to put him in there with?
I think that's the timeline is, that's going to be a key thing is to see what happens with Fury Usyk now. That's in December. We're just 6 weeks away from that now, or 5 weeks away. The key with Anthony Joshua is he has to be, this is the most important fight of his career. Let's be honest. And it's probably been said a number of times, but now is the pivotal moment of you got to go back in there. And it's not about warm-up fight. It's not about, this is the time now where, he wants to be involved in the biggest fights. He wants to prove himself still. He got beat by Daniel Dubois, yes. He got caught with a big shot. He showed so much heart. He stayed in there. And, and that's heavyweight boxing. And, it goes back to the point of fighters getting written off after the best man won on that night. Daniel Dubois 6 years ago, when he got beat by Joe Joyce or whatever it was, he should have retired apparently. So we're in a fickle sport and anything can change in a matter of minutes. When Tyson Fury had the night against Francis Ngannou, everyone started writing Tyson Fury off after he was the number one, so that's the sport we're in. You have to take it fight by fight. You have to sort of forget the past. And you can't just sit there and go, well, he beat him, so he's going to beat him because he beat him, No, and look at another example, Joseph Parker. Look what Joseph Parker's gone on to do in his career. Who would have said it? Look at Zhilei Zhang. When Zhilei Zhang fought on our Miami undercard on the Canelo show, who would have thought, in a tough fight, I can't remember who the opponent was that night, but in a tough fight, you would have thought he'd gone. No, this was during COVID, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
But who would have thought he'd then go on to do what he went on to do? You can look at all these fighters and say at various moments in their career, and then Josh was having the best run in his career, and everyone was like, he's rebought. So you can point to bits and pieces. The reality is each individual night, and you judge them on that one night. It's not like footballers are lucky in some regard. They have a bad game, they go and play 4 days later against someone else. We're talking about fighters here who have 6-7 months, and then it's like they're always compared to that last single performance. I'll give you a good example. Shabazz Massoudi is one where a lot of people wrote him off in that fight against Liam Davis before it happened because his last performance in the fight before that wasn't great. I'm not going to sit here and we even said, and you agree, it wasn't a great performance, but you're not going to have your best night every night. And one night, someone's going to be better than you. And, that's where we say it is a fickle sport and you just got to get in there and, you got to deliver. But when it comes to Joshua, I think, yes, we have to see what happens December 21st. That is a key part of the heavyweight division. And then go from there.
Yeah, let me just head back into the chat. Callum Smith as well. Yeah, how dare I forget? He's been announced on your November the 30th card. I do apologise, Callum. Massive fan of his as well.
Yeah,
What's the plan for him?
Good to see Callum back out. Look, he went in against Artur Beterbiev earlier this year. you know, he's had an amazing career, what he's done, you know, World Boxing Super Series, the fights he's been involved in, always taken fights. And he wants to build his way back up to a world title. So he's going to have a run out November 30, and we're working on the next steps for him now alongside that.
While you touch on Callum Smith, let's talk about Artur Beterbiev and Dmitry Bivol. There's some suggestion that the rematch may take slightly longer to make. Is that true?
Look, there's conversations ongoing. You know, Dmitry Bivol I believe he deserves his opportunity to get the rematch. And I hope we can make it happen. You know, it was a tremendous fight just a few months back now, on October 12th. And, you know, I want to see it again. And I think Dmitry Bivol deserves that chance to get in there and look to become undisputed. So I'm hopeful we can make it work, you know. And there is a timeline as well, you know, because obviously Artur Beterbiev with Ramadan as well. There's a time frame we need to try and make it work in. So hopeful we can do that.
Well, he's particularly active on the moment at the moment on the internet, calling out Jake Paul, which just totally blows my mind because I don't even know why he do that. But each to their own, and I guess Jake Paul's a money fight, but that was so bizarre. So, you know, Artur Beterbiev very reserved, like I said, doesn't really say much, and then to see him going having a little chat with a solo chat because Jake Paul's not really responding to him as such, like calling him out, is just like bizarre.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a fair fight, to be honest.
It definitely isn't. I'm going to go to the final question from the chat because I've got to let you go. What's next for Alicia Baumgarten? Will she extend with Matchroom versus Taylor at Croke Park, maybe?
Saw her briefly on Friday in Dallas. Yeah, look, we came to the end of our contract. We'll see what opportunities are there. We've had prior discussions. You know, and I'm sure, though, at the same time, she's going to look at what's the best opportunity for her. I don't see the Taylor fight personally. I'm just being open with you. You know, I don't see that being a fight. I think Katie's got her mind set on sort of what fight she wants to look for. So, you know, let's see how things play out. You know, we had a good relationship with Alicia over the years. You know, I think delivered some good events and good nights. So yeah, let's see how things play out.
Ajit Kabayel recently pulled out of a purse bid with Martin Bacoli. I did have Martin Bacoli's coach, Billy Nelson, on a live earlier on this week, and obviously alluded to the fact, and I can speak to Eddie about this because it's Eddie's words, not yours, potentially devaluing Martin Bacoli, basically saying, you know, when you talk about valuing a fighter, it's not, Martin Bacoli's not at the top of the list, one for a better word, and now that talk has broke down. Ajit Kabayel, he said he's going to pursue something else or another option that's available to him as a heavyweight. Could that potentially be Daniel Dubois? Not that you'd know, because
I don't know. Obviously, we don't represent him. I'm not sure what the discussions were there. I'm not sure really what Eddie said about Martin Bacoli. But I think it's about I'll get in trouble a lot for things he says, and then I'll get the backlash of it as well. So, but I think, you know, when you look at Martin Bacoli, it's risk-free reward, isn't it? How much commercial value does he bring to you as an opponent via his ability? He's obviously very good. He's a big puncher. He showed that against Jared Anderson. But how much does he bring from a commercial standpoint right now? I'm not saying in time he doesn't create huge value, you know, in the next 5 years. But if you're looking at it right now, and if you're representing the other side and you're saying, right, if I can go and get this fight instead, which is an easier fight but much bigger commercially, then that's what you got to do. Everyone's looking at it from their own standpoint. You know, if you don't represent Martin Bacoli, your job is not to sit there trying to sell Martin Bacoli, is the reality, you know, because that's not what we're here to do. You've got your own people you need to go and do that for. So I think, you know, it's just an honest perspective of where he sits right now. And it doesn't mean that can't change, you know, in time.
Well, definitely we'll catch up on risk versus reward and a fighter's value. Listen, it's been a pleasure. I absolutely enjoy speaking to you all the time. But yeah, I guess I'll see you next week.
Yes, I'll see you in Birmingham. Look forward to it. And sorry about the technical difficulties.
Don't worry about that. Guys in the chat, sorry I didn't get through all of your questions. I do apologize. It's because I had so much to catch up with Frank with, but I will see him next week. So please feel free to comment any questions and I'll screenshot them and take them with me for next week when I see Frank in Birmingham. But for now, I'm going to say au revoir to all of you. Adios.
People say I'm toxic, and honestly, I don't care.